Sales Wars Saga by Gabriel Onyango. So, some of the events in this story may or may not have happened, so don't come for me. Chapter 1. Sanctuary Gardens, Green Reef, Miami-Dade County. Behind Martha, Jerry's phone beeped again. A woman in the opposite row of mourners frowned and leveled a look in his direction. Jerry sighed again. Blocked. That's the fifth one. Martha rubbed her thumb against her skirt, as she did when annoyed. Could you at least set that thing to vibrate mode? She whispered without fully turning. She kept her eyes on the priest, and the wind blowing against the banyan tree branches, its roar almost drowning out the priest's words. His white robe fluttered one way, like an oversized flag, the silk hugging his round calves. He seemed like he didn't skip leg day. Martha had never seen a priest like this. Or was this a shaman? He cupped the urn of ashes between his hands, his head angled up, eyes closed as he chanted what Martha supposed was a prayer. To whom, she didn't know. George was a weird guy. She'd known him since college, but wished she'd known this spiritual side of him before his death. Or maybe not, now that she thought about it. Martha vaguely remembered his ramblings about finding the light after a trip to South America. And she, like the dozens of times George had come to her with a newly discovered life wisdom, tuned him out. The shaman stopped the chanting, his eyes closed but focused on something in the sky, as if he saw through those wrinkled eyelids. You think I'd make a good priest? Jerry, the company's head of engineering, stood behind Martha, arms crossed, staring at the shaman. Andrel, his intern and cousin, whispered back a raspy reply. No. Jerry continued. Yeah, I think so too. I'd make a great priest. I'll add that to my list. The priest unscrewed the urn's lid and walked towards the small group of mourners, none with tears. Arthur, George's older brother, stood at the front, a tuft of his salt and pepper hair rustling in the wind, brushing against the Ray-Ban glasses that hid his eyes. The shaman yelled, "The Creator makes, and the Creator takes." The shout startled Martha out of her thoughts. At the front, a young woman standing next to Arthur flinched. Martha wasn't sure, but the woman was likely George's niece. She knew he had one, and judging by how close her shoulders were to Arthur's towering figure, she must be. The shaman dipped a hand into the urn and took out a handful of the dead man's ashes. Martha frowned. She'd not seen that before. What on earth? Jerry muttered behind her. The shaman threw the ashes at the first row of mourners. Heads. Arthur didn't react. The niece recoiled, covering her mouth with her elbow. The shaman said, his calm, rhythmic voice a contrast to the concerned faces of mourners. We came from nature. We returned to nature, from fire to the wind. He walked to the opposite row, stopped in front of Martha, and went for another handful. Oh, hell no, Jerry said, turning to leave. Martha reached back and grabbed his wrist, angling her head to shoot him a look. We stay. The priest rambled on. Today we say goodbye to George, but a piece of him will always stay with you. Jerry's voice was tight. Stay with us? This is bad luck. Considering whose ashes those are. As the priest lifted his hand, Martha tucked her chin in. She could hear Jerry shuffling into a hiding place directly behind her. Jerry whispered into her ear. Could this count as workplace abuse? Academically speaking, work under hazardous conduct. The shaman threw a heavy handful at them. Martha closed her eyes, holding her breath. Someone coughed to her right. But surprisingly, the gentle tingle of George's ashes on her skin felt comforting. As if the man she'd gone through so much with, and yet had remained distant, had finally trusted her enough to show a soft side. But a little too late. Jerry coughed, a burst of warm air hitting the back of Martha's neck. I should have taken the Google job. The shaman raised his voice. Dear George, go forth in peace and the embrace of Mother Nature and your loved ones. May you find rest. A pause. Martha heard the shuffling of feet, then cracked open, an eyelid peppered with George's remains. The priest was talking to Arthur and the niece. A few of the mourners were hanging behind him, awaiting their turn to whisper comforting words to the bereaved. Some were heading for the entrance towards a woolen mat piled with shoes. The priest had requested all who came to the ceremony to come into the grounds barefoot. Martha wanted to have a talk with George's brother about an appropriate time to call a board meeting. He and George owned half of the company's shares. The other half was split between Martha and Ivan, a retired indie media company founder turned investor, whom she clashed with every time he opened his mouth. And he opened that mouth a lot. This is bad, Jerry said behind her. Martha turned. Her head of engineering and Andrew huddled over a phone, faces knotted with concern. Is it still going on? She asked. Jerry lifted his head from the screen, eyebrows bunched. All our email accounts have been blocked now. All of them. All existing convos. Dead. She ran a hand through her hair. How many are they? 20 emails, Jerry said, typing into the phone, spread over 10 domains. So it's not like one domain is burned and they're hitting everything associated with it. Martha asked, 20? Why'd you need 20? Jerry shrugged. It was George's idea. I just helped automate the thing. Andrew craned his neck to see what Jerry was typing. With George dead, gone, and all these emails under his name, who's going to take over sales? Jerry stopped fiddling with the screen and faced him. That's why we have interns. Andrew paused, realization filling his face. Me? Simon, I'm an engineer. I know nothing about cold emails. He gestured at the phone. And calling people? Martha held back a smile. We had interviewed a growth person to come take over the go-to-market from George, but she's flying in next month. Jerry swiped at his phone. Good thing we have an engine intern to hold the fort till then. He paused, squinting. It seems we're not alone. 2 posts in the Sales API Folks FB group from people who've lost their Zoco accounts. A chirpy voice cut in. Talking business at funerals, I see. Arthur stood with arms folded, his mouth twisted in a smirk, his glassy eyes sizing them up. Well, you heard the priest. We all got a piece of him now. And George did love his company, Martha said, turning to face the man. He nodded, a smile crossing his face. That he did. Andrew, wearing a solemn look, inclined his head to Arthur. My condolences. Arthur waved it off. He lived his life how he wanted it. He then switched his gaze to Martha. An awkward silence hung in the air. Guys, could you? Martha began. Yes, I'm going to get this sorted. Let's go, sales guru, Jerry said without looking up, and started towards the pile of shoes, his dreadlocks swinging behind him. Andrew gave Arthur another nod and followed, his ashy heels stark against the green grass. Martha watched them go, waiting for the right moment to broach the subject. Arthur cut into the silence. I wanted to talk to you about the company's future. You've already read his will, I think. Martha knew about the will. When George had shared it, she'd thought it a prank. In the event of his death, George's shares were to be sold equally between Arthur, Ivan, and Martha at a rate of $1.15 per share. And proceeds of those sales donated to Seismic, a struggling alternative rock band, and George's obsession. Martha had the privilege of once hearing them croak the night away at his over-the-top 42nd birthday party. George was, Arthur paused, clearing his throat. He was a lot of things, a visionary, a dreamer with a strong will, and that will pushed everything he was involved in forward, no matter what. Martha nodded, staring past Arthur at the spot where the priest had stood. George was a force of nature, she had to admit. He had the uncanny ability to make you believe anything was possible, especially when he looked at you wide-eyed, as if he was seeing something you didn't, and was willing you to open yours just as wide. In cases like this, bringing in another CEO to try and wear the shoes of a founder whose company was built around their identity rarely goes well. Arthur put his hands in his pockets. Martha crossed hers. Arthur powered on. Look, I've been talking to a few of my private equity contacts to see whether there's interest in the company. No. Martha shook her head. She added, I won't go for it. Arthur continued. I know it's difficult parting with something you helped build from the ground. We're on the cusp of something big here, Arthur, Martha interrupted. Exactly. That's why the PE guys are interested in us. Arthur cut in. Let's not waste this chance, Martha. Let's get ahead of this before things go downhill. Martha stated flatly. Nothing is going downhill. Arthur sighed, a vein in his neck surfacing. I know this is difficult to hear, but your entire go-to-market strategy is founder-led, and that founder is dead. His eyes darted towards the barefoot shaman walking towards the garden entrance with his daughter. He frowned. Martha said, We've got a team in place. She closed her hand into a fist and raised it. A tight-knit team, worked together for 2 years. Plus, George and I already hired a growth marketer. She's starting next month. Arthur pointed behind him with his thumb. Did you know that Sales is Easy just raised $20 million to build the same thing you're building? That happened on the morning of his funeral. If that's not a sign to sell, I don't know what is. Martha waved a hand, her brass bangles clanging. I've tested Sales is Easy's AI sales agents. Their product is clunky at best. Clunky is about to get a $20 million makeover, Arthur said. He glanced past Martha's head and pursed his lips. Just have an open mind, all right? I've called over one of the private equity people to come speak to you. Here he comes. Martha let out an incredulous laugh. Never one to let an opportunity pass you by. Arthur pressed. Just hear what he has to say. I'm not in the mood to play these games, she said, turning. Look, to be honest, I'm telling you this out of courtesy, Arthur said. Martha stopped mid-step, her expression hardening. He broke eye contact, his attention shifting past her. He waved someone over. I've already asked Ivan, and he's on board with the move. Martha scoffed, turning to leave. Arthur raised his voice, dragging out the words. We got the majority. A man in a blue suit and jellied hair smiled. Teeth that seemed too white glinted down at her. Hi, Martha. I'm sorry. We're not selling, she said without stopping. Her heavy steps took her past the thinned-out pile of shoes and towards her car nestled underneath a row of yew trees. She was not going to let that vulture gut her company, not on her watch. She should have known, she thought, as she threw her shoes into the passenger seat. When she and George had first shown Arthur a working prototype of their AI sales agent, the first thing out of his mouth was, I know someone we can sell this to. 3 years on, he'd not helped them land a single client. Now she knew what type of selling he meant. Chapter 2. Galleria Tower. Martha's leg fidgeted as she drove, her fingers tightening around the steering wheel. Ivan hadn't been to the funeral. She figured he was probably holed up in his office, working. With him, there was never a work-life balance. It was just life. The man had made a life-changing exit a couple of years ago, selling his collection of blogs to a media conglomerate rolling up online lifestyle publications. He could have retired comfortably if he wanted to, or so he told anyone who'd listen. George's nickname for him, usually behind his back, was, I think I should retire. Martha pulled off the Dolphin Expressway, SR 836, into the Green Reef Financial District and down a quiet access road. Traffic was nearly non-existent here. Old Royal Poinciana trees lined the roadside beneath a high-voltage power line that shimmered in the mid-morning sun. A thick layer of musty leaves seemed to compete with the undergrowth for attention, the blandness of the dead leaves edging out the lively greenery. She turned her head and reconsidered the scene. Or did it only seem that way to someone coming from a funeral? She slowed as she neared the entrance to a near-empty shopping center, the shops of Galleria Tower. A few cars scattered across the tarmac parking lot. A security guard raised a hand, then approached with an under-vehicle search mirror, moving around the car in slow, deliberate loops. She let out a slow breath, trying to exhale away her impatience. The guard signaled to his colleague and the metallic barrier lifted. Ivan was part of the investor group that owned the shopping complex. His office was nestled behind the mall, a reflective glass behemoth with sharp edges and a reception area that jutted out like the head of a microphone. Classic Ivan, she thought. She drove past rows of glass-fronted stores and turned toward the office. She parked near the entrance and killed the ignition, taking a few more moments to compose herself. She liked Ivan, but he and Arthur had been friends longer than she had been friends with George. Convincing him not to sell the company was a long shot. But Ivan could be flaky. Hit the right button, And maybe he'd get more excited about growing the company than handing off the glory to some PE investor. She made her way past the unstaffed front desk and into the transparent elevator that made it feel like a ride inside the stomach of a giant insect. She stared at the floor, watching the ground pull away beneath her, a smile forming as the extra weight of going up made her head woozy. That was why she avoided riding elevators when packed with people. Fighting not to burst into laughter while people worriedly stared at you from the reflective walls had a way of building the wrong reputation in a building. The elevator opened onto a near-empty floor. Glass-walled office spaces flanked the hallway, amplifying the scuff of her shoes on the tiles as she headed for Ivan's corner office. He always talked about hiring, building a team, but a year had passed since he moved in, and the only new faces belonged to secretaries rotating through the revolving doors. In front of Ivan's office sat a woman who couldn't have been older than 20. She was hunched over her laptop, tapping fast at the keys. She looked up, fingers still moving as Martha approached, then glanced at Ivan's transparent door. "Hi, Deborah," Martha said with a smile. "Can I see Ivan?" The woman glanced at the door again, then back at Martha. He's not in yet." She paused, forcing a smile to her face. Martha peered through the glass at the inner room with the white door, the one inside the larger office. Ivan's real office. The one he retreated to when he didn't want to be found. He'd once admitted at an investor mixer that he spent more time in that windowless box than in his main office with the ocean view. "When's he coming in?" Martha asked. Deborah's fingers fidgeted on the keyboard. She looked up at the recessed light on the whitewashed ceiling. "Not really sure. He had a few personal things to take care of before coming in, so—" "I can wait," Martha said, clutching her bag and eyeing the art piece chairs beside the wall with the root-like legs. They looked probably too weak to hold anyone's weight. Ivan lived for work. There were no personal days in his world. Martha suspected he was in, just didn't want to see her. If they were really planning to sell her company, she couldn't leave without a chance at convincing them otherwise. Deborah said, "I don't want you to wait long and waste your time." She blinked at Martha as if trying to recruit her eyelids to help nudge her along. "After the morning I've had, I wouldn't mind some peace and quiet," Martha replied. "I can wait. It'll give me a moment to think." She moved toward one of the chairs. Deborah's eyes, as if of their own accord, drifted again to the inner door, then back to Martha. How about I call you when he comes back in?" she offered, standing up. Martha looked at her, at the office, then stared into space, like she was weighing the offer. Something outside the window caught her attention. Ivan's car, a matte red Tesla Plaid with gold-plated rims and custom plates that read Ivan Wisdom, was sulking in its usual spot at the far end of the lot. Alone, as per Ivan's rules. No cars ever parked on either side. He loved that thing, never went anywhere without it. A smile crept across her face. Well, that would make it easier. Thanks for offering. She turned and took the stairs this time. The adrenaline was rushing through her veins, too fast to wait for an elevator, not with what she had in mind. Then her phone rang. Unknown number. She'd stopped picking those up, too many sales calls, but with her head spinning, her finger somehow hit the button. "Hello?" A chirpy voice crackled on the line. "Hi, Martha. We've never spoken before. This is Rayhan from Len Legal. Is this a bad time, or can I steal a minute to tell you why I called?" Yes, she thought, the worst of times. She took another flight of stairs, one hand on the railing, her bag swinging from her elbow, phone stretched out, on loudspeaker. "You've got a couple seconds until I get to the bottom. Better make it quick." A laugh crackled back. "All right. Condolences, by the way. I know times like this can be difficult." The man paused, and when Martha didn't fill the silence, he continued. "From the companies that we work with that have lost a founder, the succession process can sometimes, let's just say, lead to friction. Our financial aid marketplace helps founders ease the burden of litigating company succession fights." "Financial legal aid?" Martha's ears perked up. At the rate things were going, she might just need that. "Tell me more," she said, stepping out onto the walkway. Her pace slowed. The long, frantic strides shortened into an almost leisurely stroll as she moved toward the empty end of the lot where the red car stood out against the pale tarmac. The man on the phone said, "In case you get into a legal situation." Most founders, especially early stage, end up diverting personal or company resources to handle legal stuff. That can derail momentum. We finance legal bills at a small interest rate. You fill out an application, it goes to our marketplace, someone funds you, and we handle the financing so you can keep fighting long enough to survive. What's your name again? Martha asked, nearing the car. Rayhan, the man replied, but people call me Ree. All right, Ree. Right now's not a good time, but I have your contacts. Send me an email with more info. Martha, he said. In my experience, when people ask for an email, it usually means they want something specific. So I can make it relevant, what exactly would you want me to include? I don't know. Everything you've got. One more thing, Ree. How'd you know about George's? She trailed off. Oh, he cut into the silence. It's public data. We use the government registry. All right, thanks. I have to go now. Martha hung up. She slipped the phone into her bag and rounded the car, running her hand along its side. The sleek paint glinting in the morning light, catching her reflection. She looked up at the floor where Ivan's office was, then gave the back tire a light kick. Nothing happened. She took a step back and let another one fly, with more oomph. The alarm blared, a shrill wail echoing across the lot. She gave it another kick for good measure, then looked up at the office, arms crossed. A shadow moved. Then a head, salt and pepper hair, face drawn into a frown, peeked out above. There you are, she mumbled, waving at the figure. Next time you don't want to be found, ride a bicycle to work. He just got in? Deborah said as Martha returned to the office. Martha smiled. Yeah, sure, she thought, and I was never here. Ivan sat in a high-backed leather office chair. Sleek, over-designed, and seemingly too big for the tiny red thing that was his table. He pushed himself back and forth between the wall and the table. Martha, he said without looking up, concentrating on steadying himself as the chair wheeled backwards. How did the funeral go? Martha paused. Funeral-y. Ivan stopped swinging. I would have come, but I don't really do funerals. Martha glanced out of the window and nodded. It was more than a funeral. Arthur wants us to sell the company. He told you, she scoffed. No, he brought the buyer with him. Ivan chuckled. Tall guy, uptight, with the... He waved a hand in front of his mouth. With the teeth? Nodding, Martha took a seat. They've been buying up marketing agencies and sales tech companies all over, Ivan said. Martha asked, You agree with him? Ivan put his feet up on the table and stared at the roof. I'm not really excited about agencies and software. I like where robotics is going, though. I've invested in this cleaning company that uses robots on wheels. They sell to restaurants. Do you know anybody in that space? No, Martha replied. I'm talking about Arthur. You really think selling with him is the best move right now? We're just getting started. The sector's new. No dominant player yet. Everything's wide open. Why sell now? Ivan shrugged, then rolled to a table by the large ocean view window. He opened a bottle of small batch Japanese whiskey, black and gold label, poured a glass, and half walked, half rolled back. I want to cash out. A wry smile played across Martha's lips. Knowing Ivan, money talk was surface level, so she dug the wrench in. Sure, you can cash out for a few $1,000, and then the PE guys that buy it clean it up, put some lipstick on it, and a few months later, some company with a colorful mascot for a logo acquires it for 10 times the fanfare. Ivan stared into space, swishing the whiskey in his mouth. Martha tapped the table with the tips of her fingers, piano-like. Look, I'm doing customer success work all day. I see how our software transforms sales processes firsthand, and how our clients respond when it works. There's so much potential. She leaned forward, struggling to tuck her legs under the table without bumping into Ivan's knees. We're just scratching the surface here, Ivan. We're a sales tool, but most of our customers have been inbound. What does that tell you? Ivan replied. You're not eating your own dog food? He shrugged when Martha let out a hard breath. I don't know. I'm terrible at those types of questions. My answers never go where you're leading. To your point, Martha said, that just means we've only used half of our go-to-market muscle. And yet, we're still growing 100% month on month. She was hoping he wouldn't ask about churn, the leaky bucket that had been draining their progress. Ivan downed his glass. Martha stood and walked to the window. She stared at the waves slurping against the shoreline, a seagull stealing food from another. She turned back to Ivan. We could sell and make Arthur happy, or ride this wave, despite the stormy seas. He smiled. What's your post-George strategy? Take a few days to get organized. Then announce his passing to his followers on LinkedIn. All 60,000 of them. She added. Ivan's brows raised. 60? And you're going to let all that go? She hesitated. Well, we can build my social following from that announcement. Some of his followers know that we ran an agency together before SDR assistant. We could leverage that perhaps? His experiences, the stories he told in his posts, I was there too, so I just need to put my own spin on them. Martha walked towards the table. Is that a good or a bad? Ivan shrugged and frowned at something on his phone. This way, we keep momentum, right? Martha said. With time, maybe a bigger offer comes. You get what you want. After what felt like a year, Ivan looked up. To be honest, I don't really care. He put his phone down. But if you're growing 100% month on month, maybe we can push the sale forward. See how the company does without George. Martha fought off a smile. Yes, sounds good. Ivan stood up. Keep those numbers up for the next quarter, and maybe I won't vote to sell. If we're done here, I've got a brunch to catch. Martha looked up at the wall clock. It was noon. Yeah, sure, we can do that. Thanks. 100% month-on-month growth. She could do that, couldn't she? Maybe pour fuel to the fire with a few cold calls, a few demos. Chapter 3. Riviera Point, Dillon Residence, Green Reef. Arthur's gaze swept the room. It was George, distilled. A pile of books, mostly unread if the crispy spines were any indication, lay beside a teetering stack of papers on the floor. His favorite fountain pen, an absurdly expensive Mont Blanc, lay split in half, its vibrant green ink blotting the hand-knotted silk rug like a grotesque wound. Ella, his daughter, sat on a leather couch faded on one side, head down, thumb swiping rhythmically through whatever commanded her attention on her phone. She seemed an island of calm, or perhaps just oblivious. He envied it, briefly. Arthur crouched on hands and knees, peering under a heavy mahogany cupboard. The smell was musky, with a faint hint of old varnish. He sighed, a tired exhalation. This whole endeavor felt like scrabbling in the dirt. There's got to be more in here, he muttered, more to himself than anyone. He reached under the cupboard again, fingers probing for hidden recesses, for some cleverly concealed compartment George would have thought ingenious. This was the second time he'd searched this room, George's study, for documents, for anything related to his brother's finances. As next of kin, a title that felt more like a burden than a privilege right now, he'd already emptied George's main bank account. The sum had been disappointingly small, barely a sticking plaster on Arthur's hemorrhaging business. The sale of the company might get me out of this, he mused, leaning back on his haunches. He glanced at Ella, still engrossed. The faint, tinny sound of some video drifted from her device. Ella said, not looking up, Dad, did you know that sloths can hold their breath longer than dolphins? Arthur blinked. He continued staring at the underside of the cupboard. Fascinating, Ella. She continued, yeah, like 40 minutes, Maya was telling me. She saw it on this nature thing. He grunted, feeling a familiar twinge of irritation. Is that what helping looks like then? Researching rodents? The girl finally looked up, a flicker of petulance in her eyes. She shrugged, a gesture too casual for his liking. Sloths, and I did help? I've gone through this room 1,000 times already. There's nothing. I told you. Arthur's voice was tight. I knew my brother. George, always the showman, the one with the secrets. He always had something up his sleeve, suspicious of everyone, even family. Especially family, probably. I know that bank account wasn't his only stash. He wouldn't be that straightforward. He imagined George laughing from somewhere at his current predicament. Can't you just take out a loan to pay off the debt? Ella asked, the phone momentarily forgotten, her expression earnest. Arthur almost laughed. If only it were that simple. He crawled across the carpet, his knees creaking like old floorboards, moving toward an open safe. Its metallic door swung wide, its contents already sprawled on the floor like offerings to a demanding god. "I told you, the banks got me into this mess in the first place." He picked up 2 flash drives from the floor, the only items from the safe that seemed remotely plausible as hiding places for information. Small, black, anonymous. Probably some embarrassing recordings George made, he thought, turning them over in his hand. Late-night escapades, perhaps. He wouldn't bother watching. He might see something he'd rather forget, another facet of George's life he had no stomach for right now. He tossed them into his pocket. He stood and went to George's desk. A sleek 27-inch screen blinked patiently. Incorrect password. Arthur pulled out the heavy leather chair, the casters grating on the wooden floor, rolled under the desk, and stared at the screen. He typed another password combination, a nickname their mother had given George after he came home from school shoeless one day, claiming a dog had run off with them, Mudpaws. The computer beeped again, a small, electronic insult. Incorrect. The mounting losses at Full Moon Properties, Arthur's Green Reef residential development project, the thorn in his flesh for the last 2 years, loomed large as he scratched his head, willing his brain to conjure the right password. He wished, not for the first time, that he'd asked George outright about his affairs, planned for succession. Mama had done it with her small antique shop, meticulous to the end. Why hadn't he thought of it with George? A man who lived on takeout, whiskey, and late nights was always a candidate for an early exit. Given George's lifestyle, he was always more likely to go first. It would have simplified things immeasurably. Arthur had taken substantial loans to develop the property, envisioning luxury condos and quick sales. But then the economy had dried up like a forgotten sponge, and occupancy rates remained stubbornly below 50%. The interest payments were crushing him. Dejected after the computer beeped for what felt like the 10th time, he slammed his hands flat on the keyboard, a muffled thud, and leaned back in the chair with another sigh. He watched his daughter, who had resumed her phone vigil, smile at something on the screen. Then his eyes drifted above her head to a bookshelf crammed with more of George's performative intellect. A black, hardcover, silver-foiled book looked out of place among the glossy art tomes and business biographies. George's diary. He remembered George making a show of writing in it, usually after a few drinks. He'd always wanted to read it, driven by a mixture of curiosity and an older brother's suspicion. Now was his chance. Perhaps George, in a moment of drunken candor, had jotted down his computer password or a secret account number. He crossed to the bookshelf, the silence in the room broken only by the faint click-tap from Ella's phone. He flipped the diary open. Illegible scribbles in familiar green ink filled the first few pages. George's handwriting had always been atrocious, a doctor's scrawl without the accompanying medical degree. Arthur clicked his tongue, squinting at a rambling sentence that seemed to loop back on itself. Something about improving wins. Win rate? Poker, probably. George had fancied himself a card shark. He angled the book toward the light streaming from the wide colonial-style windows, trying to decipher the chicken scratch, and something small and metallic thudded softly onto the carpet. He bent to pick it up. A golden cufflink glinted dully in the sunlight. He'd forgotten about this. George had won one of a pair of Marin & Company 18-karat yellow gold cufflinks in some high-stakes bet, flaunting it for weeks. Arthur knew because he'd Googled them, while George, expansive and theatrical, had dragged out the story for a wide-eyed Ivan. $5,000 for a pair of little peacock-shaped pins. Absurd, the kind of pointless extravagance George reveled in. Arthur would never pay that for such a trinket. But someone else might want this one. Could he get half that for it, even for a single? Weren't these things collectibles? 2,000, maybe 2,500. It was not salvation, but it was something. He stole a quick glance at Ella, still glued to her phone, oblivious. Then slipped the cufflink into his trouser pocket, the cool metal pricking his thigh. Chapter 4. Co-working space, the Reef Collective. Martha's eyes flickered open slowly, the morning light seeping in through a slack in the window curtain. Groggily, she rolled to her side towards her bedside table and reached for her phone. 7:10 a.m. She cursed as she jumped up. She had planned to wake up early that morning, sort through some of George's work, perhaps take some of his calls. The faint sound of conversation drifted up. Her husband preparing their son for school, probably. Quickly, she jumped into the shower and turned the tap to cold, then counted to 3 before jumping in. The chill on her spine startled her, even though she was prepared for it. That's why she had gotten into cold showers. Though 6 months in, she had never quite learned to enjoy them. She picked out a crisp white blouse and charcoal pencil skirt, professional but comfortable enough for a busy day. Dabbing concealer under her eyes, she applied a quick swipe of mascara and tinted lip balm. Just enough to look presentable without wasting precious minutes. She swept her hair into a neat low bun and rushed down the stairs. Her father recently moved in to live with the family for medical care, sat at the kitchen table, a steaming cup of coffee in front of him, his head buried under a newspaper. "Hi, Dad," she said as she reached for her father's coffee. The ruffle of newspaper, then a large wrinkled hand intercepted hers, covering the mouth of his coffee mug. "Last time I checked, I wasn't a barista," her father said. This had been a game they had played since she was old enough to drink coffee. Her father, a Miami coffee aficionado, would never get out of the house without a cup and always insisted on brewing his longer than any normal human should. Her son called out, "Morning, Mom. Can you get me a Spider-Man bag, please? What happened to the bag I bought you 2 months ago?" Sam, Martha's husband, chipped in from behind the kitchen counter. His hand was flipping pancakes with practiced ease. Sam had taken the work-from-home trend to heart. Since COVID, he'd worked for a hospitality company handling payments, but had quit after a return-to-work mandate. Now he worked for a fintech payment startup, a 2-hour drive away, only going to the office once every 2 weeks. Junior pointed at a semi-empty bag on the table. "Well, so we don't need a Spider-Man bag," her father put in. "Why didn't you wake me up?" "My alarm should have gone off an hour ago," Martha said, reaching for a pancake. Sam flipped another. The sizzle filled the kitchen with a warm, buttery aroma. "Well, after the kind of day you had yesterday, I thought maybe you needed the rest. I had to snooze that alarm 3 times." "If you need to set more than one alarm, you're not serious about waking up," her father croaked from behind the newspaper. "Yeah, Dad, this is not the army," she replied. "I have to rush out, bye." She kissed Sam and ruffled her son's hair as she rushed out the door, bag, keys, and a half-eaten pancake in hand. When Martha got to the Reef Collective, which housed their office, Jerry was cursing his computer, on the verge of putting it in a chokehold. Andrell, headphones on, typed away at his laptop, without a care in the world. "Good morning," Martha said, opening the fridge and taking out a bottle of coconut water. Jerry sighed. "That greeting was not meant for a morning like this. There's something wrong with the servers. Now, I'm starting to regret going for this cheap cloud provider." Martha replied, "Every penny counts. That's the motto, right?" "Yeah, every penny counts, till one morning you wake up and the app takes 2 hours to load a page." Martha opened her computer, and sure enough, the support request had flooded her queue and spilled over. "You guys are pathetic, I want my money back," read one of the emails at the top of her messages. Martha sighed. They would have to find someone else to handle customer success and support, now that she was moving on to CEO duties and taking on some of the sales burden. They had built the company 1 person per department. Jerry heading engineering with an outsourced fractional team from India, Martha juggling customer success and support duties, and George sales. To maintain the same level of growth with fewer people would take them to their graves early if they tried it. Martha replied to a support ticket from Leah, the growth marketer at a cybersecurity company, who had a support ticket tally so high she appeared in some of her dreams, not the good kind. The message read, "The issue is being fixed. We'll update you on progress shortly." 2 hours later, eyes red from staring at the screen, Martha rose from her workstation and walked towards George's desk at the furthest end of the pod. Except for a spotted seashell atop a stack of paper, George's desk was bare. He liked it that way, but you would hardly notice when he was around. His energy somehow filled the place. She switched George's computer on and typed in his password. A calendar notification beeped, and Martha squinted at the screen. "Demo with Grant from Blue Horizon Financial." Martha looked at the clock, 10 minutes away, then at Jerry. "Did you fix the email problem?" "There is a demo in 10 minutes, and I need to email the prospect before our meeting." Jerry pointed at Andrew, who was stretching his neck by the window, staring at a flock of migrating birds. "Andrew, the emails," Jerry called without looking up from his computer. Oh, I had to migrate all of them to Outlook. Zoko is done, Andrew replied. So if I email someone now, it'll work? Martha asked. Andrew glanced up at the ceiling and back at Martha. Yes, it should. We think so. We? Jerry chimed in. And you call yourself a software engineer. Install a new system, and you don't test it. Martha searched through George's inbox, found 2 email threads with a grant, the second from Blue Horizon Financial. She typed an email that read, Hi Grant, this is Martha, George's co-founder. I'll be taking the call on George's behalf due to some unforeseen circumstances, if you don't mind. Thanks. She sent the email and switched back to the desktop. Though Jerry had fixed the issue, the software was a bit slow, and Martha didn't trust it for a demo, so she pulled out the slideshow they had used in a past pitching competition. A notification popped up on the screen. 5 minutes to meeting. She opened the slides and went through them. She stood from the desk and went for a glass of water. Suddenly her mouth had gone dry and her hand seemed to be shaking when she tried to write bullet points down. Trying to slow her breath, she opened the calendar invite and clicked into Zoom. She'd done numerous calls in her customer success role, and none had made her feel like this. Her heart was almost begging to escape her chest, and she had a feeling her voice would shake if she spoke. The clock hit 12:30, and no one joined the meeting. Martha kept staring at her face on the screen, then finally decided to hide it from view. She minimized the call screen and went back into her inbox to check if the client had canceled the call. Nothing. She was starting to type him an email when the screen blinked and a face popped up. The person was in motion, looking down into the camera, a clear blue sky behind him. Sorry. I'd forgotten about this. I'm out on a walk with the... He was cut off, the view turning to show the tops of buildings as the man appeared to be struggling with something. Rex, no, he commanded, righting the camera again. Sorry, that's Rex. He's a bit energetic, so I have to take him for walks every chance I get. Otherwise he eats the chair. The man looked down into the screen again, then frowned. Oh, sorry, he laughed. I was expecting the notification, said George Dillon. Is George unisex? Martha swallowed. Grant hadn't read her email, it seemed. I'm his co-founder. He's indisposed right now, so I'm taking over the meetings in the meantime. You're in good hands. She laughed, nervous. Grant said, no worries. Hey, Rex. No climbing trees. Martha began, hesitant. So I'm going to take you through the product and how it helps. Then, if you have any questions, we'll sort them out. Does that sound good? She asked, looking up at her colleagues in the office who seemed not to be paying attention. Sounds fine. Martha flipped to the first slide. So we are an AI sales co-pilot that helps remove most of the manual work your SDRs hate to do. Our technology. Grant interrupted. Sorry, what did you say your name was? Imelda? Martha, she replied. Yeah, Martha, could we cut to the good part? Your email says you can help to reduce our SDR count by up to 60%. Martha's eyes widened. 60%? Even when they were still running the agency, when they developed the first version of SDR Assistant, they still had people handling the manual list building work and fact-checking the AI's output. What had George promised here? Quickly, she flipped to the conversation thread between the two and opened the initial outreach email. So how do you do that? The man asked, his camera shaking, making it hard to look at his face without going dizzy. Martha explained. Well, we layer together multiple AIs, from scraping data from multiple places to individual lists to sales messaging and follow-ups, though you will still have to check the AI's work before you make the campaigns live. Can we get to the demo? Can I see the demo? The man asked. Yeah, she swallowed, clicking on the shortcut to George's SDR Assistant account. The page started to load, then hung. Oh, sorry, we're just having a bit of difficulty with the internet right now. Our office is changing the providers. She clicked on the refresh button, then switched to rage clicking. Nothing worked. It's taking a bit of time, sorry, but once it loads, you'll see how I just need a list of your company prospects, websites, and the AI agent will do all the heavy lifting. Martha eyed the spinning wheel at the center of the screen, muttered curses to speed it along. When that didn't work, she aimed a few other choice ones at Jerry, who smiled at something on his monitor. She said, sorry about that. No, Rex, put it down, the man shouted, then looked down at the camera again. You know what? Probably this isn't for me. We don't have that many SDRs anyway. Thank you for the meeting. Martha began, but the man's face disappeared from the screen. She gasped under her breath and pushed the keyboard away. She asked Jerry, I thought you said the server issue was fixed. It is, Jerry said, a frown plastered on his face. I just tried to do a live demo and it couldn't load, a chirpy voice said at the door. Hi, team. Everyone's head turned, and Arthur stuck his head into the office. I see everyone is hard at work. He turned and beckoned someone in. The private equity guy from the funeral popped in, wearing a stiff, overpressed suit. Everyone, this is Paul Nowak, Arthur said. Paul's firm is going to be a new partner at SDR Assistant, and he wanted to come and see where the magic happens. He beamed a smile at Martha, who gave a slight shake of the head. You're selling, Jerry said, surprise in his voice. Well, Martha began, then stopped, pressing her eyes with her fingers. That is Jerry, the head of engineering, Arthur continued, pointing at the engineer. And this is, he trailed off, Andrell. I'm the intern, Andrell put in. And you've already met Martha, our lovely founder, Arthur said. When did this happen? Jerry asked, letting out a disbelieving laugh. I mean, we just buried George. Andrell mouthed a whisper too loud to be a whisper. I need to start brushing up my resume. Nobody needs to brush up anything. We're not selling, Martha said. Arthur stepped forward, lowering his voice. With these things, Martha, it's best to be forthcoming with the help. Martha kneaded her temple, ignoring him. I would have preferred to be the one to tell you this, but 1. We are not selling. Arthur here wants to sell his shares, not the company. It's his right. 2. As per our company agreement, he needs a shareholder majority to be able to do that, a majority he does not have. What do you mean, a majority he does not have? Arthur asked, looking from the buyer to Martha. Ivan didn't tell you? Martha asked. The buyer said, Arthur, seems like you still have things to work out. Call me when you're serious. He walked out. Arthur followed after him. Paul, wait, we are... Jerry stood from his workstation. So the company is on the market, huh? He wants to sell. I don't, Martha said. Jerry rubbed his hands together. I've turned down bigger offers because I believe our product has a chance at being revolutionary in the industry. Sell, and a year later, I'm a squeaky cog grinding my knees to push some bigger company's machine. I believe that too, Martha said. Jerry asked, that I'll be grinding my knees in some bigger company's machine? Our product is revolutionary part, she said. Martha moved beside Jerry, sitting atop the table. I'm going to be straight with you, with both of you. Yes, there is a chance 2/3 of SDR Assistant might be sold off to private equity, but that doesn't change the mission we're on. We're part of an industry revolution. We're lean. We're effective. We're fast. Martha followed Arthur down the stairs and found him bent over a silver Mercedes, peering into the driver's side window, saying something she couldn't make out. Just then, Paul pulled out of the parking lot. Arthur walked a few steps after the car, shouting, Give me time, I can make this work. Walking up behind him, Martha said, I don't appreciate you coming into the office without telling me. Turning, Arthur threw his hands up. Oh, come on, Martha continued, bringing in your buyer before the board has met over this, parading him in front of my team before I've had the chance to talk about it with them. You're making this to be bigger than it needs to be. I just thought it'd make things run smoother if Paul got a chance to meet the team, to see the company is running, even after, George, Arthur said. Without talking about it with the co-founder still running the company. If there's one thing you're not, Arthur, it's random. You knew what you were doing. Let's skip the conspiracy theory drama, shall we? Arthur said. Sooner or later, this sale is going to happen. Martha stated flatly, I'll take later. Arthur shook his head. Admit it, you can't keep up. You're down one man, who, shall I say, he lowered his voice, was responsible for 1,000% of your sales. She shot back. Might as well make it 2,000 if we're going by those math skills. Your competitors are killing you. He dragged out the word. An SDR assistant has a rat's ass chance of surviving the next barrage of companies that will launch competing products. I'm not a tech expert, but... You're not a tech expert, Arthur? I didn't notice that, sorry. She clasped her hands in front of her chest. Arthur pointed at a man heading towards a truck with a trash bag. I mean, anyone with a toothpick for a brain can launch an AI product now. Martha replied, Well, Arthur, better not get left behind then, huh? Launch that AI product. Arthur argued, You have no moat. Nothing. Look, we have a good shot at getting something out of this. The sooner you get on board, the better the transition, and the better value we get for all shareholders. Martha scoffed. Did George know this is what you felt about the company? Or did these feelings magically appear after? Arthur rolled his eyes, crossing his arms. Martha pointed at the building behind. I'm the one who's walked through those doors every day for 2 years. I've talked to tens of customers every day. I'm telling you, Arthur. It is too early to sell. You'll regret it, he replied, says the company without a CEO. Martha ran her tongue over the roof of her mouth and smiled. It's a waste of time talking to you about this. Iva has given me 3 months to keep the ship on course. She turned for the office. You don't know what you're doing. You'll ruin a good thing here, Arthur called after her. Ruin a good thing, she muttered to herself as she ascended the stairs. Chapter 5. Crandon Golf Course, Key Reef. Where is he? Arthur strode towards Ivan's secretary. She stood quickly, a nervous smile flashing across her face. No, he's not in. Arthur walked past her, pushed the glass doors open, and paused. He's hiding in that inner office, right? He strolled in. Ivan, we had a deal. What is this I hear? He pushed the inner door open. Nothing, just the quiet whir of the air conditioning. Mr. Dillon, what's wrong? The secretary asked, frowning, phone clutched in her hand. Arthur's eyes flashed towards the phone in her hand. Are you texting him as we speak? Text him? She repeated, wringing her hands. He hasn't been in today. He doesn't come in on Thursdays until about 3 p.m. Thursday, he thought, eyebrows bunched. Then realization dawned. Yes, that's today. Crandon Golf at Key Reef, where Arthur and Ivan were both members, held a weekly tournament every Thursday. Ivan never missed it, and never won anything, now that he thought about it. Never mind, he muttered, heading for the door. He could feel the secretary's eyes on his back as he turned into the elevator. People can't be trusted these days, Arthur muttered, long strides carrying him toward his car. He slammed the door and peeled out of the driveway. The golf club was 10 minutes from Ivan's office. That was the entire reason the idiot had joined the investment group that owned the office building. Not the future value of the development. Definitely not the foot traffic from the shopping complex at the front. No, the man just wanted to be near the golf course. Probably so he could hide out and smoke cigars all afternoon after stabbing a friend in the back. He pulled onto the empty road, the engine roaring against the quiet of the suburb, his fingers tapping the steering wheel. It's always the friends you trusted most who twisted the knife, singing Ain't No Sunshine while they did it. Ivan's favorite song, he'd known him since 6th grade, introduced him to George, talked his brother into letting him invest in SDR Assistant, even though Ivan added little value to the company. Now he had the nerve to side with her? To block his only shot at liquidity? Arthur sighed as the golf club's compound came into view. Well, maybe if he had told him about Marco, he would have helped, but could he trust him not to run his mouth? Something had nagged him about convincing a known gangster to invest in his real estate project. But didn't the bold shape the world? Cowards stayed at home. Who would have known things would turn out the way they did? The plan was simple. Finish on time. Stay on budget. Breathe down the contractors' necks as they worked. He did all 3. Was it his fault people didn't want to live next to a sewage treatment plant? You couldn't even smell it most days. Honestly, what were they, princes? Now Marco wanted his money early and didn't want to hear anything about how only 30% of the apartments had been sold. Proceeds from the shares would enable Arthur to settle that, perhaps put some money into marketing the other units, maybe start another project. The air changed as he reached the edge of the golf course property, the sea breeze carrying the musty smell of seaweed and salt. A groundsman was fiddling with the sprinkler system behind the administration building, the grass a shade of yellow and brown in patches despite the watering. Driving through the gate, Arthur returned a curt reply to the guard's warm greetings. A regular. He had been a member for close to a decade. Probably the longest-standing member, apart maybe from old man Lucho, but Lucho could hardly swing a golf club anymore, so he didn't count. He pulled into the parking lot, wedging his dust-coated Honda Accord between a polished red Maserati and a new-looking Range Rover. Careful not to scratch the Range Rover, he opened his door and banged it shut, then squinted at the tinted windows. These country clubbers never learned how to park properly, hogging space like they owned the place. He would raise it with the governing committee. With long, energetic strides, he headed for the reception. A short, middle-aged woman in a black bow tie smiled up at him. He didn't return the smile. "Hi, Mr. Dillon." "You're in for the tournament?" Arthur asked. "Have you seen Ivan?" "He's at 1,000 Hills. The boys wanted something challenging this week," she said. "Give me a minute. I'll ask Felix to get you your favorite clubs." "No need." He walked off toward a line of golf carts parked neatly beside the building, hopped in, and headed for the grounds. The 1,000 Hills section of the course was rough. Sand traps, scattered trees, thick grass, and wind whipping in from the sea. In the distance, bright colors flickered against the green. A group of 10 or so stood clustered together. A heavy-set man swung a club with a grunt. The ball vanished into the trees. Someone laughed. He veered off the paved path and onto the grass, picking up speed as he headed toward the group. "Ivan!" he shouted as he closed in. Ivan's eyes went wide. He rushed for a muted blue golf cart and bolted. "You know this place is 100 acres, Arthur muttered, swerving his cart between the other golfers, curses erupting behind him. Ivan swerved towards the trees, stealing a glance back. Arthur followed, branches brushing the top of the cart like hands, slowing him down. They popped back out on the far side, Arthur close behind. The green stretched wide ahead, empty, ending in a cliff that dropped straight into the ocean. The wash of waves on the rocks below loud against the quiet of the course. Ivan shouted from his cart, angling his head and almost losing control. "I didn't really say yes. Technically, I said I didn't care whether you sold or not." Arthur turned sharply, nearly driving into a sand trap. "Oh yes, technically that fixes everything then." He realigned himself directly behind Ivan's cart and floored the accelerator. The cart whirred and groaned. "You agreed to back me if I could find a buyer." "I found a buyer." "I don't remember that. If I did, I must have changed my mind." Ivan shouted back over his shoulder. He glanced forward too late, veered sharply left, and plunged down a gently sloping hill. The cart bounced violently at the bottom, turning towards the sand trap. He sped through it and ground to a halt in the middle, tires kicking up sand. Arthur got out of his cart and trudged towards Ivan. "Let's have a conversation like adults. You promised to back me up on the deal. How many times have you come to me for help?" He spread his hands wide. "Did I ask any questions? Did I stab you in the back? No, right? No?" Arthur jabbed a bony finger into Ivan's chest. "It's your turn. Back me up on this deal. Or," he leaned in, "I'll tell dear Matilda about Venice." "You'll what?" Ivan swung a low punch, hitting Arthur hard in the stomach. Arthur keeled over. "And you call yourself a friend?" Ivan said, stabbing a finger towards the back of Arthur's head. Arthur wheezed, dropping to his knees. "You've grown soft." "I didn't even put my back into it," Ivan said, his breath heavy. "FYI, I haven't been to a casino since Venice, overground or underground." Arthur collapsed to all fours. "Hey, you okay?" Ivan bent down, a hint of concern in his voice. "Hey, buddy, you okay?" Arthur's hand shot up. Sand sprayed onto Ivan's face. "You dirty!" Ivan staggered back, clawing at his eyes. "I just got new contacts last week." Slowly, Arthur got to his feet, still panting. "You're backing me up on this deal, Ivan." Ivan pulled out a handkerchief and wiped his face, eyes watering. "Whatever. I'm taking your cart. You can walk back. Might help you lose that gut." Chapter 6. Co-working space, the Reef Collective. The silence in the office was oppressive, almost. Martha rubbed her thumb against her little finger, thinking, and it wasn't helping. The soft hum of the air conditioning unit filled the space, providing background music. She stared out the large windows at a line of story buildings that blocked the view of the ocean. Still, you could feel it, the breeze, the squawk of grackles outside. She rubbed her eyes, tired from staring at her screen all morning, combing through sales data. The worst responses were from large companies, she said. So I'm guessing we should remove anyone past 500 employees from our lists. Mm-hmm, Jerry said to the keyboard. She had always loved bouncing ideas off people. George had been a great sport, switching between tasks and verbal sparring without losing a beat. The engineering team, on the other hand, was something else. Andrew, opposite Jerry, had been fiddling with a Python script for the past hour, trying to get it to crunch the data from their CRM and from SDR assistants' scraped lists. If they were going to fix sales and get more from outbound, the data had to tell them a story. First, it had to tell them the right story. Then they would build their strategy from there. I think I've done it, Andrew said, leaning into his computer. Martha stood from her workstation and moved behind him. Did the ChatGPT suggestion help? No real developer uses ChatGPT for automation scripts, Jerry said, shooting Angela a look. Martha said, It's about the end result, isn't it? No, Jerry quipped. Angela hit a key loudly and leaned back. There you go. Martha moved closer. Numbers moved on the screen, then stopped. All the new companies that came inbound are software companies, Angela said. Martha leaned in. So we haven't sold to any agencies. And most of the companies buying the product are under 50 employees. That's why they're churning so fast. Some of them probably don't even have product market fit yet. Jerry scratched between his dreadlocks. We also don't have product market fit. So what about the Sales This Easy customers? Martha asked, ignoring him. They'd already scraped all the customer logos from Sales This Easy's website, along with any company names and case studies and reviews. Andrew tapped something on the screen and a bar chart popped up. Here are all the industries they sell to. Are you planning to go after them? Andrew asked, looking over his shoulder. Martha shook her head. The companies, no. The industries, yes. Her phone vibrated on the table. Arthur. Now what is he calling me for? She muttered. She picked up. Arthur? She said. He replied, Just wanted to make sure you saw the email. What email? The board meeting email. Ivan's back on board. We are selling to the PE. Martha shot back. No, you are selling to the PE. You can't force me. And I have a right to first refusal on your shares, he asked. And you can afford to buy both our shares? We will see, won't we? She said, hanging up. What? Jerry asked, eyebrows raised. Martha sighed. He convinced Ivan to vote to allow the share sale to the PE. Jerry said, well, on the plus side, if you still get to keep your shares and they leave us alone, we might be fine. It's not like they're going to fire everyone here. He paused, eyes drifting upward. I mean, Andrew might be a good fire. But that's not the point. The bulk of the dev team is in India. We have one engineer. Yeah, two, Andrew said, not looking up from his screen. But they're not going to leave us alone. I have dealt with them before, Martha said. In the agency George and I ran. It didn't end well. I don't want to end up in that cycle again, especially now when we need free rein and an appetite for risk to compete with players like Sales This Easy. She dialed a number on her phone, an old friend who worked for the biggest venture fund in the city. A voice on the other end said, If you are calling me and not texting, you need something. Martha laughed. That's not true. I call just to say hi sometimes. When I need something. Well, listen, Tatiana, Martha said. I need some advice. Can you meet for lunch today? Oh, Tatiana said. That bad? You don't know the half of it, Martha said. Is Pete still open? The one near your office? Yeah. Let's do 2, though. I have meetings till 1. All right. See you then. If anyone had the context to help finance a buyout without losing her soul, it was Tatiana. Chapter 7. Pete's Green Reef. When Martha pulled into Pete's parking lot, traffic was low. Sun-baked asphalt stretched out, empty, marked by neat white lines. A handful of cars clustered near the entrance, leaving the farther sections mostly vacant, shimmering slightly in the heat haze. The restaurant was the oldest seafood place in South Florida. Their red banner with its swordfish mascot loomed high above the building. Its glass walls overlooking the street were tinted, so you couldn't tell if it was full or not. Martha parked, got out, and climbed onto the low concrete planter box bordering the lane. Stretching to her tiptoes, her eyes scanned the vehicles. Tatiana's dark blue Porsche Macan was nowhere to be seen. Good. She was afraid she'd be late. Head buried in her work, she had left at 15 minutes past 2. Knowing Tatiana and how she hated having to wait, and yet always insisted on being years early to her meetings. "Welcome to Pete's," a woman at the front desk smiled. "Is the terrace open?" Martha asked. She liked the upper terrace because she could stare down at everyone coming in, and she got a glimpse of the ocean between the shorter buildings surrounding the restaurant. "Yes. Go right up." Diners were spread out among a few of the tables, most of them at the end of their meals. The aroma of fresh bread competed with grilled fish and something spicy Martha's nose couldn't quite make out. The restaurant kitchen lay beside the stairs leading up. As Martha ascended the stairs, she could feel the heat radiating from it like a blanket. She took a seat at the farthest end and angled her chair to see both the entrance and the view outside. During high season in the winter months and early spring, getting a table at Pete's was next to impossible. Reservations booked out a week in advance, and the best you could hope for was takeout from the drive-thru downstairs. But in the summer lull, when the heat chased tourists away and hotels quietly refreshed their lobbies, locals were treated like royalty. A server approached, dressed in crisp black trousers and a white shirt with subtle strips of red piping on the shoulders and cuffs. He handed her the menu. Martha took it and put it on the table, knowing what she wanted. "I'm waiting for someone. Can I get you anything while you wait?" She sucked her teeth and considered. "Know what? I'm hungry, so I'm just going to start. Get me some fish soup and Cuban bread. Thank you." The server nodded slightly, smiling, and walked back downstairs, his steps quiet on the wooden floorboards. Martha dug into her meal. The faint coconut flavor in the soup blended well with the crisp Cuban bread. She closed her eyes and concentrated on the flavor. She should think about eating out more, even if it involved just carrying her lunch and eating at the waterfront park, rather than hunched over her desk, chasing crumbs between the keyboard keys. A voice said, "Yes, Martha. Make yourself at home." Martha turned to see Tatiana, the click-clack of her heels announcing her presence. She wore a cream-colored silk blouse tucked into impeccably tailored navy trousers, carrying a tan Loewe puzzle bag. Martha smiled. "I would have stood to give you a kiss, but my fish won't appreciate being abandoned midway," Martha teased. "Sorry I'm late," Tatiana said, as she slid into the chair opposite Martha. A server followed close behind, his smiling routine in place. "Hi," Tatiana said to him. "I'll have a salad, please, with lime water." The server departed. "My meeting went on and on," Tatiana continued. "Just when we were about to finish, that's when people started getting sudden inspiration for new ideas." Martha shrugged as she bit into another piece of bread. "Oh," Tatiana said, pausing. Martha looked up. Tatiana continued, "I'm so sorry about George." Martha nodded. People had said that statement so much she didn't know what to say about it anymore. "How are you holding up?" Tatiana asked. "Everything is moving so fast." "I'm buried in work, so that helps." "You take care of yourself, girl," Tatiana said, reaching out for Martha's wrist and squeezing it. Martha stared at her soup. The vibrant red contrasted sharply with the white of her plate. The server came back with Tatiana's salad, and she stabbed at it with a fork. According to their last WhatsApp chat, Tatiana was experimenting with some new diet inspired by a travel vlogger she followed on YouTube. No alcohol, no carbs, and a third she couldn't remember. "So," Tatiana said, "tell me, what did you want to speak about so urgently?" Martha sighed. "George played a sort of prank on us. In his will, he left his shares to be sold equally between Arthur, Ivan, and me. It's a long story. But Ivan and Arthur want to sell to a private equity firm. And you don't want to," Tatiana finished. Martha pushed her plate aside, wiping her hands on the cloth napkin. "It's not the vision George and I had. We wanted to grow this. Maintain control. No VC fund, nothing. When I exit, I don't want to have to work again." Tatiana smiled, the crinkles at the edges of her eyes showing. "And what will you do with all that time? You're a workhorse." "I don't know. Maybe fishing. Maybe golf. I'll get a job as a cook at Pete's if I really need to work." Tatiana asked, "How are they valuing the shares?" I don't know, we're still at the early stages. We're having a board meeting on Friday. Martha added, from what I remember, you have the right to match whatever offer they get. Even if they value it at 2 times our revenue, I'm not able to buy 2/3 of the shares. I don't have that kind of money. Well? Tatiana took another bite of her salad and picked up her glass. Something caught her eye off to the side. She turned her head sharply away. Oh gosh, it's Martin. Don't look. What? Martha turned her head in that direction. Oh gosh, why can't you ever listen? Tatiana whispered. Sorry, Martha whispered back. After hundreds of thousands of years of your ancestors living in a forest with dry sticks for weapons, you learn to look when told not to look. A man in khaki shorts and Crocs headed towards them. Tatiana groaned. Martha looked away. Too late. The man had caught her gaze. Tatiana said, Well, there goes. What? Tatiana glared at her, angling her face towards the window. Martha replied, Might as well look. Only thing worse than getting eaten by a saber-toothed cat is getting eaten by a saber-toothed cat you can't see. Has he seen us? Tatiana hissed. Yes, he's coming this way, Martha said. Ah, that's Martin. He's one of the founders from our portfolio companies. Recently exited and has nothing better to do. If he comes here, he won't leave. Tatiana, is that you? Martin said, bending over slightly to peer at Tatiana. She pursed her lips, mouthed something Martha couldn't hear, then turned to face Martin with a pasted-on smile. Martin, nice to see you. Martin opened his arms wide. Tatiana rose and gave him a brief side hug. He turned to Martha, a broad smile on his face. Martha offered the same quick side hug. Fancy seeing you here, Martin said. Yeah, Martin, how's it going? Tatiana replied coolly. Who is this? He asked, gesturing towards Martha. Just a friend. Martin turned and pulled a chair from an adjacent setting, plopping down uninvited. Tatiana and Martha exchanged looks, Tatiana rolling her eyes and shifting in her seat. So spill the beans. Martin boomed. Any interesting businesses you're passing on? Might want to send them my way. Without waiting for an answer, he turned towards Martha. These big VC guys only want billion-dollar exits. There's value in the smaller fish, too. Martha smiled faintly and looked at the remnants of her fish soup. Nothing at the moment, Tatiana said, her curt answer leading into an uncomfortable silence. Martin stared out the window. Did you hear about Grow Up? The vertical farming startup I invested in last year? Founders in jail, bunch of crooks. You know how much I'd pay to get my hands on him? He clenched his fist, veins showing. Tatiana didn't comment. Martin turned back to Martha. What do you do? Martha glanced at Tatiana, who gave a minuscule shake of her head. I work in customer success. What industry? Martin leaned forward, pulling his chair closer. Tatiana told you I'm recently retired and looking to invest? Tatiana touched Martin's elbow. Martin, we're kind of in the middle of something. Is she fishing for information from you? Martin asked Martha conspiratorially. Martha returned a tight smile. Oh, I know what this is. Trying to keep all the good ones to yourself. Well, don't let me interfere with your sleuthing, Martin said, winking at Tatiana. Nice to meet you. He nodded at Martha, rising, then made his way towards the staircase. If your house was burning down and down to embers, I would tell you not to let him invest in it, Tatiana muttered as they watched him disappear down the stairs. Why? Martha asked. Tatiana explained. I connected him to one of my founder friends. He showed up at their office twice a week with suggestions, everything from their Facebook ads to the way their office was arranged. They eventually had to buy him out just to get rid of him. I had to mediate. She stared at the empty staircase, shaking her head. Where were we? Tatiana said, turning back. Martha replied, How do I purchase shares with money I do not have? Well, Tatiana began, you could raise money under a special purpose vehicle, from friends and family, or from investors you trust. There are no investors I trust, Martha cut in. Well, if you don't want PE in your house again, you're going to have to find a way. Figure out what direction you want to take the company, then look for people who fit that vision. Martha stated, I want to grow sustainably and lean. I don't want somebody demanding we hire 100 people overnight, or pushing their agenda on me. Well, Tatiana scribbled on the back of a napkin. I'll give you a few names in case you need them. 3 names. Start with him. She underlined the name at the bottom of the list. Mario. I'll text him about you. She wrote their numbers next to their names and slid the note to Martha. Oh, Martha said, and since George is gone, I'm having to do the sales calls. And it's not working out. Do you know anyone who might help? Tatiana asked. Help do the sales calls? No, a coach. Someone to show me what I'm doing wrong. I'm fumbling in the dark here. I'll ask Ivan. He probably knows someone in door-to-door sales, but I'm sure there are people who work with founders on this. I'll ask around, Tatiana promised. Thanks. Chapter 8. Co-working space, the Reef Collective. Martha stood outside their shared office, watching Andrel and Jerry gathered in front of Andrel's computer screen, pointing. They were so engrossed they didn't see her staring at them through the clear glass. It wouldn't be that bad, she thought. Selling. Jerry could always get a job with the brand names he'd worked for before. Andrel was young. He could leverage his experience interning at a fast-moving startup to land a similar gig. He'd had a chance to touch every facet of the business here, not just engineering. That could be an advantage. Getting into SaaS had been George's dream, but she could do without it. She still had the money from the agency they'd sold, and, to be honest, she had flourished more there. Maybe she could go back? Perhaps run a small consultancy to help agency owners with operations or customer success. With the $20 million Sales This Easy had raised, they would probably get a good valuation from the PE buyer, given how hot the sector was becoming. She shook her head, eager to rid herself of the thoughts, and pushed the door open, as if carrying them inside would expose her. The pair at the desk were so focused on the computer they didn't hear her enter. What's happening? Martha asked. Andrel's eyes flickered over. You won't believe this. We've gone viral. Martha asked. What? The bad kind, Andrel added, leaning in to read something on the screen. Some guy. You know someone named Leonardo? Martha shook her head. Andrel continued. Well, he claims he did a demo recently and our product doesn't work. Says our software feels like it was cobbled together by 6-year-olds. Martha reached for her phone, quickly tapping open the LinkedIn app. I swear if I see any more popcorn emojis, Jerry muttered. Martha had 5 notifications, none about what Jerry was talking about. She searched for the post. Andrel laughed dryly. Here's another one. I knew he would chime in. Who? Martha asked. Jerry answered, Donald from Sales This Easy, with yet another popcorn emoji that I hope he chokes on. He typed something furiously into his keyboard, hitting the keys hard. And if he does and asks me for a glass of water, you know what I'll do? Martha finally found it. 1,000 likes. Leonardo Gillespie. Was that the man with the dog? She mused, switching apps and searching her Gmail. Maybe it was during the server outage, she said. Remember that? Jerry coughed. I don't know. Maybe. But if he's saying my software was cobbled together by 6-year-olds, let's see who this guy really is. Martha scrolled through the comments. Most were from anti-AI people who didn't believe in AI sales. Some comments had sparked many arguments on their own. Then Donald's comment popped up. It read, most of these companies who just launched yesterday claim to have AI software, but it's just fraud. They have nothing. It's all smoke and mirrors. That's why we're investing in our team to ensure our product is the best in the market. If anyone wants to check out our working AI sales tool, check out Sales This Easy. #SalesTech, #alwaysworking. Martha pulled a chair closer, biting the corner of her lower lip as she typed into her phone. Donald Jenkins, F. off. Her finger hovered over the send button. Then she deleted the comment, letting out a long breath. She looked over at Jerry, who was still typing furiously. What are you doing? She asked. Don't reply to anything. Jerry looked up. I mean, some of these things they're saying. Glorified Google Sheets, glorified web scraper. Come on. The more we let people think they can come for us, the more they'll continue. Martha walked over to Jerry's desk. We're going to respond, just not now. Delete that thing. Jerry's hands moved slowly over the keyboard, highlighting and cutting the large block of text he had prepared. Let's see what this Leonardo guy does for a living. He switched browsers and typed the name into a site Martha didn't recognize. Let the man be, she said, moving over to her own desk. She opened the posts on her desktop and noticed they had tagged George. She moved over to George's empty desk and switched on his computer, typing in the password, "You rock." As she mouthed the words, it felt like a lie. She opened LinkedIn on his profile. 560 unread notifications. She went through the first few and clicked over to his inbox. How come she had not thought of checking this? It had completely skipped her mind since his death. His personal brand was responsible for about 50% of the company's customers. His inbox was full of concerned messages linking to the post. "See?" Martha said. "Someone has tagged George in the comments. He's getting hundreds of notifications. How do you plan to handle the announcement of his death?" Jerry asked quietly. "I don't know," Martha said, though she had thought about it multiple times in the quiet. What could they do with George's account, his 60,000 followers? Throw it away? "Well," Andrell began hesitantly, "since most of our customers are international, couldn't we just keep the account going?" Martha looked up, first at Andrell, then Jerry. No one wanted to say it. Probably unnerved by the silence, Andrell added quickly, "I don't mean like posting from the grave or anything like that. I mean like using the account to like your posts, build your profile as the point of contact before word gets out." Martha tapped her fingers on the desk, considering. "No, best to get on with it right now. I'm going to announce it." She turned back to George's computer, went to his profile feed, and her fingers slowly moved over the keys as if resisting. She typed, "This is Martha, George's co-founder. I'm afraid I have some bad news." She finished the post, read it 3 times, then gave Jerry and Andrell a turn at making tweaks. She was about to do another editing pass before she decided to just click, post, and shut down the computer. Then her phone started pinging. "Catherine Woj wants to connect. Michael Chen wants to connect. Amit Singh wants to connect." Chapter 9. Pinecrest, Blackwell Estate. "Martha Johnson here to see Mario?" She spoke into the intercom panel mounted beside the imposing gate. Silence. She was about to repeat herself when the gate groaned, the 2 ends parting smoothly inwards. Mario Blackwell, one of the investors Tatiana had recommended she approach to buy Arthur's and Ivan's SDR Assistant shares, had agreed to a meeting faster than Martha expected. After Tatiana's intro, she had sent a pitch deck with their recent growth numbers and revenue figures. Mario now wanted to see her in person. Hopefully he would invest, she thought. The more she had researched the man, the more convinced she became that he'd be a better partner for SDR Assistant than the private equity people. He had bootstrapped the vertical SaaS company serving manufacturers for 10 years and had exited for $25 million while still owning 90% of the company. That's the type of journey Martha saw herself undertaking. He had made a few well-known investments in South Florida companies that were household names. None of them were in tech, though, she worried. Maybe he had chosen to stay away from the sector? She drove down the paved walkway, flanked by a well-tended garden that looked sculpted by an artist rather than merely maintained by a gardener. She came upon a second gate that housed a smaller compound with a sprawling, single-story modern bungalow featuring large glass panels and a flat roof. The gate opened automatically as she neared, and that's when she saw the other vehicles, about 30 packed onto a large paved motor court in front of the house. She walked up to the front door and knocked, then waited. The compound was extremely clean. Despite being surrounded by trees, no leaves lay on the pristine grass, and the trees stood motionless in the still air. The door creaked open, and a barefoot man in a bright yellow t-shirt with hand-painted butterflies fluttering up one shoulder looked at her questioningly. "I'm here to see Mario," Martha said, feeling awkward under his gaze. "No," he said, then closed the door. Martha stared at the thick, curved mahogany in front of her, mouth slightly open. Then the door swung open again, and the man laughed, pointing at her. "You should have seen your face. Come in, I'm Mario. We're having a little party." He led the way past a narrow corridor dimly lit with blue light, lined with framed photos. In what looked like a small basement office display, each successive picture showed Mario with larger groups of people. By the end of the corridor, Mario, wearing thick cream-framed glasses, stood beaming in front of a big team, everyone in black corporate t-shirts except him. He wore a bright orange one. They entered a large sitting room where a disco ball hung from the ceiling in the middle, rotating slowly and casting flecks of light around the space. Scores of people moved around comically, headphones on, the soft thud of their feet on the thick carpet, the only sound in the room. Martha stopped and watched. A man in an oversized Republic FC hat danced near a woman in a floral dress, their movements so out of sync they couldn't possibly be listening to the same music. Noticing the look on her face, Mario grinned. "It's a silent party," he explained. "Mrs. Rutherford does not like noise, so this is our middle ground." He waved vaguely. "Mrs. Rutherford is my Bengal. She's somewhere around here, hopefully not chasing squirrels again. Come, let's talk outside." They sneaked their way through the dancers onto an empty back porch overlooking a pool. A woman floated motionless on her back in the water, eyes skyward. Mario pointed to a table surrounded by two deep, cushioned lounge chairs. "Drink?" he asked. Martha shook her head. "Nothing?" Mario asked. "Maybe water?" The man popped back inside and came out with a tall glass of cold water, condensation forming on the outside, and handed it to Martha. He took a seat, taking a sip from a cocktail glass he held. "Well," he began, "I took a look at the deck. I like what I saw. I like what you've done with a small team." He paused for another sip. "You know, the true measure of a company is what they can do with less. Anybody can get $1 million and throw it at." He spread his fingers and gestured up at the clear sky. "Whatever, majority of your team outsourced. I like it. So you're saying 2 of your investors want out?" Martha had left out the part about the PE buyer, figuring it'd be better to deliver that bit of info in person. "Yes. My co-founder recently passed and left his shares to the 3 other remaining partners, his brother and a family friend. They want out." He nodded, turning to look at the woman floating in the pool. "You know, I've never been able to do that. Just float like that, weightless." He stared at the water for a moment, then snapped his head back towards Martha. "Yes? I tell you what, I'll buy all their shares for 3 times your annual recurring revenue." He leaned forward slightly. "I'll have the majority, yes, but I won't interfere. I'll let you do your thing, make all the decisions. If you need my help, I'm here." A smile threatened to play across Martha's lips, but she fought it back. 3 times ARR. Okay. She had hoped for between 3x to 5x. But with the way software valuations were going, 5x was less likely. Now she just hoped the private equity guys wouldn't match this. "Well, that's good to hear. Oh, and there is the small issue of there's another buyer interested. So if you don't mind, I suggest we move fast." Mario tipped his glass over his mouth and emptied it. "Oh, you didn't mention that. I didn't want it to seem like a tactic to get you to give us an offer faster. You know, some people do that," Martha said, an anxious laugh escaping her. Mario brushed invisible dust off the armrest with his thumb. "I don't like to overpay." He squinted, as if looking at Martha burned his eyes. "And when there's another buyer, that tends to happen. You should have come to me before you went to them." Martha wanted to tell him that she didn't go to anyone. That George's death felt like the first domino to drop, and everything seemed to be falling after it, out of her control. She put in quickly, "They're private equity, so." Mario stared her down. Martha started trying to recover. "Private equity. Private equity doesn't like to pay much. They don't like to go high." Mario turned his chair slightly to face the trees bordering his property. He closed his eyes and took a deep breath. Martha watched him, silent, her heart rate climbing. "Please say yes. Please say yes," she pleaded internally. "No," Mario said finally, opening his eyes and turning back. "I'm sorry, I can't do that. I've been in this game for a while. Being played off another buyer never ends well for anyone involved." He stood up. "Oh, wait," Martha scrambled, thoughts racing. "What if I convince? You don't understand. This is the dawn of a new industry. The old way of doing sales is dying. We are among the few companies with a working product. This isn't just some other SaaS company. We are disrupting a century-old profession. At the rate we're going, maybe in a few years, we won't even need humans to do this. And when that happens, you'll want to be on the right side of history, won't you?" She held up a hand as Mario started to say something. You don't need to give me an answer now. Sleep on it. Trust me, this will work out. She backed away into the house, bumping into one of the silent dancers. She rushed through the throng towards the front door and turned. Mario watched her with a bemused look, shaking his head. She mouthed a silent "sleep on it" as she closed the door in front of her. Chapter 10. Full Moon Properties, Green Reef. Arthur stood at the front of the apartment building, hand hovering as he held his smartphone. The camera flash still on, but barely visible against the bright sunlight. Did he really need another picture? The ones on the real estate portal did just fine, if you asked him, but his daughter suggested taking fresh photos and sending them to her to use on Instagram. Frankly, he couldn't see how teenagers would be the right audience for these apartments. But hey, his way hadn't worked. He'd try anything, sell his left pinky if he had to. He stretched his hands out before him, twisted his phone into landscape mode, and tapped the screen twice to focus on the decorative grillwork on the front door. He snapped a picture. The sun was behind him, perfect for this, but the picture didn't capture the reality, the beauty his own two eyes did. Maybe that's why the apartments weren't selling. Perhaps he'd need to hire one of those professional real estate photographers. Problem is, they didn't come cheap. He walked to the side and took another set of photos. These were less interesting. They looked more like something you'd find in an architecture magazine. The gutters and the drain pipe snaking its way down to the ground stood out more than anything against the plain-looking windows. He walked back inside, with Ivan back on board for the SDR assistant sale. The liquidity he'd get from selling his shares gave him options. He had a couple of new ideas for this place. Perhaps he could use some of the luxury condos as Airbnbs? That would work, wouldn't it? At least until the internationals came in calling, and he could convince some of them to part with their money for a second home. And then, people like Marco, who lost faith too early, would beg him to take their money back. Maybe he would, on his next project, which would be twice as big as this one. He went back into the building. All the units on the ground floor were still empty, maybe because they lacked a balcony. Stupid architect. Why didn't he think about that? If there was a way to change that now, he would have. Or perhaps he could just discount those apartments. He opened the door to the unit on the left, the one bordering the sewage treatment plant. He took photos of the sitting room, framing the view from the window, and moved to the open kitchen, capturing the cabinets. He was about to step into the bedroom when he heard a car pull up out front. Then, footsteps. He came out of the unit to investigate, phone still in hand, angling his head forward, peeking around the corner of the corridor wall. "Ah, there you are." Marco approached, his usual white linen shirt, semi-transparent, loose, and too long for his height, billowed slightly in the breeze. "There you are," Marco repeated. "I told you we would find him here." He gestured at his silent bodyguard standing near the entrance. "We looked for you at your house, didn't find you. Called, didn't pick up." Arthur frowned. "Wait, you went to my house? Marco, the business between us is business. No need to go to my house." Marco laughed, stepping forward and tapping Arthur firmly on the shoulder. "That's why I love this guy. He has my money and has the nerve to tell me where I can go." He looked around the empty hallway. "Is this my apartment?" He cupped a hand to his ear, angling his head forward theatrically. "I don't hear anything. I don't hear any babies laughing. I don't hear any blenders making food. I don't hear the sound of money counting. Nothing. You promised me returns. Now it's been a year. I've been patient enough." Arthur licked his lips and shifted his feet. "Well, these things take a bit of time. But once people start coming, it builds up. Like compound interest." "Like compound interest," Marco mused. "I like that. Maybe I should charge you interest." "All right, enough of this. Something has changed. I need the money sooner rather than later." Arthur forced a smile, but his face kept defaulting back to pursed lips and a tight jaw. Maybe we wait for the next tourist high season? I'm sure we can get a few buyers that way. I'll sell your apartments first, make sure you get your returns." "Next season?" Marco scoffed. "Listen, I'm going to give you till Monday. $250,000. And I won't charge you interest because, my friend, I like you." Arthur asked. "Monday? What?" "I don't have that kind of money on me." "But you have this." Marco gestured vaguely at the surrounding building. "You have rich friends." Get me my money by Monday, first thing. Bring it up to the restaurant. I don't want to come looking for you again. Arthur breathed hard, his chest tightening. I don't want to lie to you, Marco. I can't get you that money by Monday. Give me till November. See what I can pull together then. I'm still trying to see how much I can get from some things my brother left me. Maybe I can get you something earlier if that works out. Oh, I forgot, Marco said, his expression softening momentarily. Sorry for your loss. He reached out and held Arthur firmly by the shoulders. The gold rings on his fingers felt cold against Arthur's shirt. Smiling thinly, he slapped Arthur hard across the ear. Arthur stumbled back. What? He got back to his feet, touching his ear and looking at his fingers. Streaks of red. Marco followed it up with a punch to the face. As Arthur reeled, the bodyguard stepped forward, walked back towards the entrance, and quietly closed the gate. Chapter 11. Co-working space, the Reef Collective. The 30 open tabs on Martha's computer made it hang, sluggish and unresponsive. She opened another one anyway. This one was an article from a source called Sales Guru, talking about consultative selling. She stretched her legs forward, her heels pressing into the floor as her knees swayed from side to side. She'd woken up in the middle of the night and couldn't fall back asleep. That was when she decided she had to get good at this sales thing. Now she had a discovery call in 1 hour with a 500-person MarTech company. She closed the Sales Guru tab and opened another. Nobody showed examples. All the articles focused on telling her how to do it, even the YouTube videos. She wished she could just get access to recorded calls, see what a good discovery call looked like versus a bad one. She pressed the heels of her palms against her eyes. They felt swollen and tired. She looked towards the window and found Jerry staring. What? She asked. Nothing, Jerry replied, leaning back in his chair. Just thinking, Martha asked. While staring? She took another measured breath, trying to slow her heart rate. Just that you seem, Jerry bobbed his head and raised his hand slightly, palms up. I don't know, a bit tense. I have a lot on my mind, Martha admitted. I've got a discovery call in a bit that I need to turn out well. Yeah, Jerry said, still staring, looking unconvinced. You've been looking like that for a while. Look, he added quickly, I don't need to pry. But if it ever comes to it, I've got a list of friends who've exited companies who might want to invest. Martha nodded, gazing past Jerry's shoulder at a pair of white-headed grackles standing on a power line, squawking loudly. Full disclosure, Jerry continued. They're a bit weird, but they're better than having a stranger come in. Martha went back to her research and got lost in it again until a phone ringing brought her out of it. She glanced at the screen, Tatiana, and picked up. Hi, Tatiana asked. How are you holding up? Well, Martha sighed. I'm holding on, so that's that. Can I call you back in an hour? I've got a call I'm preparing for. This won't take long. I'm rushing into a meeting too. But I just saw something you might want to see. I'm in this Slack group with some of the firm's investors, and someone shared a screenshot of an Interpol report. I've just emailed it to you now. Martha frowned. Did you just say Interpol? Yup. So apparently they're investigating the Sullivan family, trying to track down their money. SDR assistant appeared in one of the reports. Apparently they have ties to you guys. Everyone in town knew the Sullivans. An old family who had lived in Miami for 3 generations and reputedly had their hands in everything from drugs to gambling. No one ever said it aloud, though. What do the Sullivans have to do with tech companies? Martha asked. Last time I checked, Marco couldn't even use a computer. Tatiana laughed. That's what I thought too. Marco Sullivan. They had been classmates years ago. She and Tatiana had gone off to college, and Marco had remained in Miami. They'd never talked since. A notification beeped on her computer. 10 minutes to meeting. Martha's heart rate quickened. Well, thank you for telling me anyway. Weird as it may be, Martha said into the phone. People are talking about it, Tatiana warned, and word spreads fast in these circles. If you're still looking to sell, it might affect your chances. Something crackled through the phone, like someone crumpling paper near the mouthpiece. Then Tatiana's voice came through, distant and muffled. "Just give me a minute, I'm coming." "I see you need to go. Let's talk later then," Martha said. "Hey Martha, let's talk later," Tatiana said, her voice clearer now. "Seems someone needs me to be their secretary. Bye." Slowly, Martha put the phone down, staring into the distance. "Interpol?" She pushed the phone aside and opened the LinkedIn profile of the prospect she was meeting, an SDR manager. She highlighted a line in the bio. "Used to be a singer. Recently promoted, had a stint in customer success. Maybe that was a point of connection she could use." She looked down as a strange, tingly feeling washed down her legs. She tried to continue reading the prospect's profile, but kept going over the same lines. "It's hot, right?" she said without meaning to. Jerry said from his desk. "Not really." Her hands turned clammy, and she could feel her heartbeat where her elbow pressed against her stomach. She tried to take deep breaths, but her chest felt tight, constricted. Slowly she rose, the numbness in her legs making her stumble slightly. Jerry looked up. "Are you okay?" Martha nodded, but avoided his eyes. "I just need to go to the bathroom," she mumbled, heading for the door. She rushed into the bathroom and locked the door behind her, just as her chest started tightening painfully. Back against the wall, an overwhelming sense of dread washed over her. As much as she tried to wrestle back control, like she used to in yoga when her mind wandered during sessions, she couldn't. Stumbling to the sink, she pushed in the drain stopper and turned the cold tap on full blast. The walls seemed to be closing in. She breathed in, hard, ragged, and dipped her head into the water. The cold bite against her face shocked her, and she almost gasped. She choked back the urge. The darkness behind her closed eyes made it worse, so she opened them, squinting against the distorted bubble of water around her face. She held her breath and counted backwards slowly from 30 until the vice-like grip on her chest lessened slightly. She withdrew her head, gasping, closed the tap, and sank down to the cool tile floor, her back against the wall. Her chest heaved, but less violently than before. This was the second time this had happened. The first was more than a decade ago, her first night in college, away from home. She wiped her face with a paper towel, drained the sink, and walked shakily out of the bathroom. Jerry stood just outside the door, eyebrows raised, a concerned look on his face. "What's wrong?" "Just felt a little nauseous, that's it," she said, walking past him quickly and back into the office. Jerry followed close behind. "Your phone has rung 3 times, he said quietly. Martha glanced at the phone, its faint vibration dull against the table. "Tatiana again? More bad news?" She looked at the call ID. Her son's school principal. What was wrong now? "Hello? Ms. Johnson?" The principal's sharp voice came through. "Could you please come to the school? Junior has just tried to choke another student. We can't have that." Before Martha could respond, the call cut off. Martha looked around, confused, then pointed at Andrew, who was sitting at his desk in the corner, pretending not to watch her. "Could you?" Words escaped her. She closed her eyes, trying to will them back. "Could you please go into my email and message the prospect I'm supposed to have a meeting with? Ask them if they'd be willing to postpone the meeting by an hour." She grabbed her bag. "JR's gotten into trouble at school. His father is out of town, so I have to go." Jerry nodded, standing by the door now, arms crossed, saying nothing but giving her the same look her grandma used to give when she was worried. Chapter 12. PLC Green Reef Academy. 1, 2, 3, 4, Martha muttered under her breath as she pulled into the school parking lot. She'd done this counting exercise all the way from the office, and it had helped calm her down, but she still felt as if the world was moving slower than usual. She paused in her car for a few moments, staring back at her reflection in the rearview mirror before getting out. She walked slowly from the parking lot, ignoring the paved walkway and cutting across the grass garden towards the administration block on the west wing of the school. A boy stared at her through a classroom window, looking disinterested in the teacher scribbling something on the whiteboard. She went up the stairs and was surprised to see her father standing behind Junior, arguing with another man in a blue polo shirt tucked into khaki cropped trousers. What was her father doing here? Knowing him, this would not end well. He was a nightmare for teachers when Martha was growing up. Following her approach, Junior ran towards her and hugged her tightly around the waist. "Ma, I swear he was the one who started it." He insisted again. "He's the one who started it." "Okay," she said gently. "We'll sort it out." She dropped an arm over the boy's shoulder and approached the two men, who were now arguing animatedly. The other boy, considerably larger looking, though his face was still that of a child, sat on a bench opposite the bickering dads, studying the ground. The door swung open, and the principal stuck his head out. "Would you both stop that?" Then he saw Martha. "Oh, you're here. Then let's get on with it." He opened the door wider and beckoned them in. "They called you?" Martha's father grumbled as they walked in behind the other angry parent. "I told them I could handle it. Or do they think I'm too old for this?" "I've settled all manner of school issues for all of my kids," he announced loudly. "How did you know about this?" Martha asked her father quietly. "Sam called me," he replied. "Said JR's class teacher texted him." Martha scoffed silently. The principal lived next door to them and had gotten into a quarrel with Sam, her husband, over the size of his hedge. Or was it for planting an illegal dandelion not on the approved list? Sam had taken a liking to gardening recently, the obsessive kind, and the principal had reported him to the resident management organization. It was no surprise the principal hadn't called Sam directly. The principal dropped into his leather chair, and the rickety thing groaned as he leaned back. He pointed at the boys standing stiffly in front of their parents. These two, usually best of friends according to the class teacher, got into a fight during recess. Now, this is of particular concern because the man eyed Martha, who was still consciously counting her breaths, the echo of her heartbeat still vibrating in her ears, then pointed at the kids. Because Junior choked out Malik. "Now wait a minute." Martha's dad cut in, a disbelieving chuckle escaping him. "Choke out? Last time I checked, you had to get your hands around someone's neck for any choking to occur. Look at that neck," he gestured at the other boy. "I mean, I probably couldn't fit my hands around it, and I used to wrestle." The other boy's father put in defensively. "It's not the size of the dog in the fight that counts." "Size should have counted in this fight," Martha's father retorted. "I mean, look at him. Are you even sure he's 13? I'd like to see a birth certificate, a driver's license more like it, because he looks like he should have one." The other father addressed the principal, indignant. "Now you're getting out of line. Are you going to let him speak about my son that way?" Martha stared at the thin layer of dust on the window overlooking the playground, behind the principal's head. "Well," the principal began slowly, "we find that it's healthier when people express everything they feel in a safe space, like here. But kids," he looked at the boys, "could you please step out for a minute and let the adults talk this out?" The two boys headed out, eyes downcast, the bigger one opening the door and letting Junior step out first. 4, 3, 2, 1. Martha counted silently. The other father exclaimed as soon as the door closed, "There have to be consequences for choking. You can't have little terrorists running around with our kids." "Terrorists?" Martha's father scoffed. "Kids are soft these days. It's not like he put him to sleep or anything. Just a little tussle between boys, nothing much." 4, 3, 2, 1. Martha counted again, holding her breath. Her father gestured widely towards the door. Ask your son what he did to get choked out." The principal addressed the other boy's father. "Well, the boy did say that your son took his beaded bracelet from him." Yes, thank you," Martha's father exclaimed. "And that was a gift from his grandma. My late wife, God rest her soul. If you tried to take it, I'd choke you." The other father appealed to the principal. "You see? This is the kind of behavior the kids are mimicking. If you have a parent threatening to choke other parents." "I didn't threaten to choke you," Martha's father clarified pointedly. The principal sighed. "Okay, at this rate, we're not going anywhere." He turned to Martha. "Ms. Johnson?" Martha found herself staring out the window at an 11-story building in the distance, with a sharp tip that seemed to fork into the horizon like a pin pricking a balloon. Her father touched her elbow gently. "Are you okay, honey?" Martha's attention shifted back into the room to the 3 pairs of eyes staring at her. She blinked, just a little nauseous. "Oh, okay." The principal cleared his throat. "The boys already apologized to each other. Since they're best friends, that will sort itself out. What I wanted to address is the choking. We are concerned that Junior might be learning things, maybe related to what he's watching." Looking over his glasses, head inclined, he glanced pointedly at Martha's father. "Well, self-defense is important," her father stated firmly. "I was teaching him a few tricks, me and my son-in-law in the backyard." "See?" the other father exclaimed. "That's what I'm talking about." "Wait," Martha started. The door swung open, and a woman poked her head in. "I'm sorry for interrupting, but the board is ready for you." Martha thought. The board? Yes, that meeting would be tonight too. Her thumb rubbed against the heel of her palm. "Oh, okay," the principal said, standing up abruptly. "I've suspended both boys for 3 days, with detention." He looked at Martha's father. "Just ease off on the kung fu lessons, will you?" "What is my son being suspended for?" the other father demanded. "He didn't fight anyone. He was only defending himself. The punishment goes both ways," the principal stated firmly. "Your son gave as good as he got. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a meeting to get to." He pointed towards the door. The parents shuffled out. The 2 children sat together on a wooden bench in the corridor, playing with the beads from JR's bracelet. Martha and her father exchanged a look, her father shaking his head slowly. "You look like you've just seen a ghost," he said quietly as they walked towards the parking lot. "Everything okay?" "Yeah, just tired," Martha said. Inside her car, she opened her phone and checked her email. The prospect she was supposed to meet with had agreed to reschedule the meeting to 3:15 p.m. Martha looked at the time atop her screen, 3:13 p.m. Sighing, she clicked on the invite link and blurred her background before joining the meeting. She stared at herself on the screen. She seemed different from how she felt in her head, calmer, more assured. "Hello?" a voice said, bringing her attention back. Her eyebrows rose at the face looking back at her, the other boy's father. She noticed the embroidered truck logo on his polo shirt. "Oh," the man said, recognition dawning. "It's you," Martha chuckled, a small surprised sound. And then it morphed into an uncontrollable laugh. She tried to stop, compose herself, but it felt like someone else had control of her mouth, her chest, the tears running down the sides of her eyes. At first, the man on the other end appeared startled, wide-eyed. Then he chuckled too. For a few seconds, the 2 parents laughed together, the absurdity of the situation washing over them. Composing herself, Martha said, "What are the chances?" "I mean, yeah, right?" he replied, shaking his head. "Since you're already here," Martha suggested, "let's do this in person?" She got out of her car and looked around. The man stood in front of a large Toyota pickup, leaning against the bonnet. He raised his hand. Martha walked over. "Okay, so you have a field sales team," Martha began, pulling up the mobile version of SDR Assistant on her phone. "This works perfectly for that." She showed him the screen. "Once they talk to a client, they can mark the activity here, and it will send that information straight to the CRM, so they don't need to wait till they get back to the office. If they see a company nearby or a recommended one, they can just type." She typed Pete's Restaurant into the app, and it loaded up details about the company and a basic organizational chart. Martha asked, "What job title do you sell to?" "Procurement or supplies," the man said. Martha put procurement into the app search bar, and it pulled up the name and contact details of Pete's procurement manager. Below that, Google Maps directions to the office appeared. "I see how that could work," he admitted. "So our main value proposition is in being able to tap into data from various sources and bring it quickly into one place," Martha explained. "It's like a simple way to access different APIs without needing to know how to code." "All right," the man nodded. "I'll go check in with my department head, then I'll get back to you." "Done," Martha confirmed. "I've already sent the pricing info to your email." The man turned and peered through the front window of his truck, where his son sat busy typing into a phone. Now I need to get this one back home before he drains my battery. Oh, yes. All right, let me let you go, Martha said. She hesitated, then added, and I'm sorry about that. She gestured vaguely towards the school building. The man waved a dismissive hand. Kids. Martha stood beside her car, watching the man pull away. He waved a hand through the half-open window. Martha sighed. Maybe selling wasn't that bad after all, if this was how her school visits were going to end. Chapter 13. Co-working space. The Reef Collective. Strangely, the Reef Galleria seemed busier at night than during the day. Martha watched the Friday crowd from the seat of her car as her husband, seated on the driver's side, tapped his fingers rhythmically on his chest. The board meeting was scheduled to be held on the upper terrace. Do you have to do it tonight? Especially after what happened today, Sam asked. Martha breathed heavily but said nothing, instead looked out of the window at a group of teenagers passing by, eyes glued to their phones, laughing. They walked in front of the car without noticing them, heading for the mall entrance. Can I at least go with you? He asked. You mean into the board meeting? Yes, why not? I mean, Martha paused. There's no rule against it, but it'd be like bringing my big sister to a knife fight, you know? She shrugged. Last time I heard that saying, it didn't go quite like that. You know what I mean. No matter how it goes, I need to do this on my own. George is gone. Might as well start facing the music, win or lose. Sam shook his head, then took a forceful breath. Okay. Just remember I'm here if you need this 2 pounds of muscle to rough some heads up there. Anyway, I'm accompanying you up. There's a sports goods store on the 3rd floor with some new jerseys I've been wanting to take a look at. She met his eyes. I'll send you an empty text every 10 minutes, just so you know I'm fine. Chapter 14. The Reef Galleria Rooftop. Arthur winced as he went up the stairs, pain shooting up his ribs with every movement. His face felt more swollen than it looked, his left eye almost shut, though he could see through a sliver. His forearms ached, but he didn't regret blocking Marco's blows. It had probably saved him a broken rib. He supported himself on the railing, paused atop the 3rd floor, and looked up towards the rooftop terrace. People gave him a wide berth, stealing glances. What are you looking at? He muttered under his breath. He was going to get himself free of this soon. He had managed to convince Paul Nowak from the PE company to join them for the board meeting. Hopefully this would help speed things along. He would skip town for a few weeks until the due diligence was done and the money hit his account. Then he'd finally settle it with Marco. That had been a mistake, getting him involved. Marco had no vision, a brute meant for street dealings, not the high-end world of real estate. That's where real wealth was built. Arthur crested the last stair, the rush of wind from the sea almost unbalancing him. He composed himself at the top, staring at the ground for a moment, then lifted his head towards the long table set up at the farthest end of the rooftop restaurant space. He looked around. The place looked almost finished. What was Ivan waiting for? If this was his, he would have opened it already, gotten that money flowing. At the head of the table, Ivan sat, drink in hand, laughing at something. To his side sat Martha, leaning forward. Arthur limped towards them, trying as much as possible to mask his labored movement. Then Ivan spotted him. Look what the cat dragged in, Ivan laughed. What happened to you, buddy? Did you piss off your wife again? Arthur clicked his tongue. I don't want to talk about it. He didn't like the way Martha watched him, like he was some wounded animal. That's the same look he used to reserve for George whenever one of his harebrained schemes failed. Arthur ambled over to the other side of Ivan, away from Martha. Gingerly, he lowered himself into a seat. His right arm couldn't take his weight, and at the last moment he dropped onto the wooden chair harder than he'd wanted. Pain shot through his ribs, up to his swollen left eye. He tried to steady his breath, but it didn't help. What happened? Martha asked, her eyes wide. You look like you need a hospital. I'm fine, Arthur said, waving her off dismissively. Let's just get on with this. All right, Ivan said, pushing his drink aside slightly. I guess I'm going to have to take the lead on this. No, I've got this, Arthur croaked out. Just one more person is remaining if you don't mind. He looked over Martha's shoulder at the tall man approaching them, Paul Nowak, dressed sharply in a dark suit, crisp shirt, and a gray waistcoat. I invited Paul to join us, since this is just a formality to get things going fast. Martha shook her head slightly. This is supposed to be a board meeting, not a dog and pony show. How is everyone doing? Paul said, tapping Ivan lightly on the shoulder. He eyed Arthur's battered face. Looks like someone fell down the stairs? It's been a long day, Paul, Arthur said. That it has been, Paul said, taking a seat beside Martha. Martha, nice to meet you again. Martha nodded but said nothing. Don't mind me, Paul beamed, looking around the table. I'm just a guest, here for the dessert after. He laughed, but no one joined him. The silence stretched. Now that's out of the way, Arthur said through a swollen lip. Let's get down to the good stuff. As per our shareholder agreement, we need a majority to approve the sale of shares. So let's put it to a vote. Those who vote to approve the sale of 2/3 of the shares of SDR Assistant to Blue Capital, raise your hands. He put his left arm halfway up. Ivan lifted his glass slightly, as if making a toast. All right, Arthur declared, ignoring Martha's stillness. That does it. Let the minutes show that Ivan and Arthur voted for the sale of the shares, and Martha opposed. Ivan chuckled. Minutes? When did we start keeping minutes for these things? Let's get on with this, shall we? I have a party to get to. He glanced towards the staircase and took another sip of his drink. On to the next, Arthur mumbled, ignoring Ivan's comment. Paul, the floor is yours. I know we've talked about it, but would you formally present your offer to the board? Arthur leaned back in his chair, trying to hide a sigh of relief. Glad that was done. Thank you, Arthur. Paul nodded, then gestured towards Martha, who kept rolling a rippled golden ring on her finger. Well, I like what you guys have done. I like that your head count is low. Your cost of acquisition is not ridiculous compared to most companies in the niche. So there is room to grow. We see areas where Blue Capital could add value. He paused, his expression shifting slightly. But in light of new information that has come our way, there's too much risk with SDR Assistant. Arthur frowned, leaning forward despite the pain. Risk? What risk? Sure, we've had a leadership hiccup, but the team is still in place. He gestured at Martha, who kept her eyes fixed on her ring. I'm not talking about that, Paul said smoothly. Let's just say some new information has come our way that makes buying partial shares of SDR Assistant unattractive for us. If we are to participate in this, we need 100% of the company. We want full control, a clean break. Martha's head shot up, her eyes wide. Ivan spat out his drink, then burst out laughing. Arthur leaned forward again, his ribs protesting. That's not what we agreed when we talked this morning, Paul. Martha said, if that's the case, I'm voting no on the sale. Now that I don't need to be here, see you later. No, we are selling, Arthur almost shouted, panic rising in his voice. Martha, this is the best deal you are going to get. The space is heating up. More money is coming in. You have nothing. Your entire go-to-market strategy is in the ground right now. Spittle flew slightly as his voice cracked. He locked eyes with Martha. The CEO is dead. My brother is dead, he repeated, tears starting to well in his bruised eye. A muscle twitched in Martha's neck. Her throat moved as she swallowed like she was pushing something down. I know, Arthur. I know I'm sorry. She stared down at her hands resting on the table, then shook her head. I'm sorry, I just can't sell right now. It's too early. She stood up to leave. Arthur shot up from his chair, then clasped a hand to his chest, wincing. No, we need to sell. Ivan stood up and put a hand on Arthur's back. Easy there. We don't have a drag-along clause, Arthur. We can't force her. Paul Nowak stood as well. Well, nice doing business with you. He looked pointedly at Arthur and Ivan. Don't call me unless you can get me the whole company. He gave a curt nod and walked away. Ivan tapped Arthur lightly on the chest, then followed Paul towards the exit. Arthur stood in place for a moment, staring at the staircase, swaying slightly, then sank back down onto his chair and buried his battered face in his hands. Chapter 15. Banyan Trails, Johnson Residence, Green Reef. The smell of charcoal and sizzling steak filled Martha's nose as she watched her father fiddle with the grill. a checked apron tied around his waist, humming something that sounded out of tune. The shimmer of heat rising from the coals made his face seem livelier. She took a slow sip from a glass of lime juice, nothing like a cold drink on a hot Miami afternoon. To her side, Sam played one-on-one basketball with Junior, his tiny frame shooting pull-up jumpers with a broken form. Sam bent low, guarding the 13-year-old who moved towards the makeshift rim with enthusiastic but uncoordinated energy. It had been a while since Martha had taken a weekend off this completely. She seemed to have forgotten how to relax, her hands itching to open her laptop. As if reading her thoughts, her phone screen lit up on the table, the vibration sending ripples through her drink. Mario Blackwell, the caller ID, read. She answered, the bright sun suddenly feeling a little less warm. A low, gravelly voice boomed from the other end. You like to striptease, don't you? Martha froze, her glass halfway to her lips, the lime juice suddenly bitter. Huh, Mario? Yes, Mario. He chuckled, but the sound seemed empty of joy, laced instead with something cold. I hear good news. Your deal fell through. How did you know that? Martha managed. I have my ways, doesn't matter. What matters is, now that the roadblock is out of the way, we can finish up our deal. You already agreed on the price. Martha paused, looking up at her father, his white beard stark against the smoke rising from the grill. I'm sorry, Mario. I don't need to do the deal anymore. I was going to email you first thing on Monday. He chuckled again. You just got cold feet. Or maybe you were just trying to play hard to get with your little other buyer tactic. Fair enough. He continued. You know I took a trip once, after I sold the business. Flew first class to Bordeaux. Rented a villa near Chateau Valwador. Know the place? You pay an unholy amount of money just to breathe the air. And they bring out this wine. This nectar of the gods, they called it. Aged in ancient clay jars or something. Blessed by a bunch of Benedictine monks during a celestial alignment, some bull like that. And this sniveling sommelier, all proper, he pours me a glass. I go for a sip, and he tells me to wait. Let it breathe, Monsieur Blackwell, he says. That way your palate will detect the subtle nuances. He let out a harsh, abrupt laugh. You know what I did, Martha? I tipped the whole damn bottle. Didn't let it breathe. Didn't wait for any silken wings. Because I don't like being strip-teased. You came to me, showed me what you got. You promised me a piece of that company, and I'm gonna get it, one way or another. Martha cut in. I'm gonna stop you right there. Come on, Mario cut in, the venom momentarily replaced by a smoothness. Are you playing hard to get now? You need an investor. You need some money to compete, right? I can provide that. I'm sorry, Mario, Martha repeated. I just can't do it. I managed to convince the board otherwise, so... The line went dead before she could say more. Martha lowered the phone slowly, her hand trembling. The vibrant colors of the afternoon suddenly seemed dull, the happy sounds of her family playing distant. She looked at her father, oblivious, tending to the grill, and swallowed. Author note. Hi there, Gabriel here. Thanks for reading this novella. A bit of backstory on the weird source for this book premise. If you got your nose anywhere near tech, then you saw the founder mode phenomenon that was all over social media in 2024. I saw that, then I noticed agencies repositioning themselves to hype up founder-led sales. And I thought, wait, what if you build your entire company on the founder's brand, and that founder somehow dies? Dark, I know. But I majored in entrepreneurship in college, and that was the thing hammered into our heads. Build something that can survive when you die. Hence, Sales Wars Saga. I wrote the first chapter in front of the TV and couldn't eat till I finished the thing. Later posted it on Substack. 2 people subscribed, one from a fintech community I'm part of, and then a stranger somehow found it. That gave me the nudge to finish the first episode. P.S. If you want to read more, join the waitlist below. Startup fiction is almost a non-existent niche on Amazon, even though TV shows covering the same things have strong fan bases. Billions, Silicon Valley, the Elizabeth Holmes series, the name skips my mind, and Industry. And the few startup-based books I've read haven't gone past book 1. So if you want to see the next one, send me a smoke signal by joining the waitlist.